Welcome to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Here's your host, the Bitcoin Boomer himself, Gary Leland.
Hello, I'm Gary Leland, known as the Bitcoin Boomer, and this is the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Called that because I'm a boomer and I'm interested in Bitcoin, not because it's for boomers. This show is for anyone. So if you're interested in Bitcoin, please come to the show every week and share this show with your friends. Now today we have Dante Cook joining us from Swan Bitcoin, and my great producer, Stephanie. Stephanie, you review everything. What'd you think of this week's guest? What's coming up here?
Well, I'm excited for Dante to come. He's like not the first Swan. We had like main guy Corey on, I think, in the past. So that's cool to see and hear more about what Swan's got going on. Isn't Swan part of Block Boom?
Yeah, Swan is. Swan is our platinum sponsor this year, which is great. Our platinum sponsor from the last 4 years didn't come through again, and Swan jumped on the boat and took the platinum sponsorship, which we are truly thankful to Swan. But there are so many things about Swan that are worth talking about, so I'm kind of excited to be talking to Dante today about Swan. I'm happy to talk to anyone from Swan. It's a great company. It's doing great things in the field, I believe. I also want to make sure that before we go to Dante, to let you know that I need you to do me a favor. I need you to share this show with your friends. If you have anyone that you think is interested in Bitcoin, wants to learn about Bitcoin, or needs to learn about Bitcoin, please do share this show with them. This show is just to educate you about Bitcoin. Well, I'll say this probably before the show's over again, but the show is not trying to sell you any Bitcoin. I don't have any Bitcoin I want to sell you. I'm also not going to be pulling out any gold or anything trying to sell you. All we want to do is educate you about Bitcoin. Maybe after watching this show enough, you'll decide, hey, I understand Bitcoin now. Maybe I need to get some Bitcoin. Maybe you'll say, I understand Bitcoin now. I have more of an understanding, but I'm not interested in Bitcoin, buying any Bitcoin. Whichever way you go is fine, but it's something you need to learn about. This is life-changing technology, world-changing technology, in my opinion. So you need to be aware of what's going on with Bitcoin. So do stay tuned, because we're getting ready to go to a commercial break. But when we come back, we'll have Dante Cook with Swan Bitcoin. So please do stay tuned, and we'll see you in a minute or two. Thanks. And welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. You know, I enjoy doing this show because I love talking about Bitcoin. I truly, without a doubt, think Bitcoin is about to revolutionize the world and change money, finance, and everything as we know it. So all I'm trying to do is share that information with you so that you are prepared, I guess, basically. That's it. That's all I'm trying to do. Now, on today's show, we have Dante Cook from Swan Bitcoin. Dante, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, Gary? Thanks for having me.
It's actually going really good, thank you. Almost ready for BitBlock Boom, which Swan is our platinum sponsor this year, so I do want to get that out to all the Swans out there. We appreciate everybody's involvement with BitBlock Boom this year. We're going to have a great time. Yeah, you're located in Indiana, I think you said?
Indianapolis.
Indianapolis, yep. Sorry. Is that Bitcoin country up there? That's my question.
You know what? Swan's a pretty, I would say, international company. We've got employees in 25 countries, but we have like 5 people that are in Indianapolis, actually. So of the distributed nature of the company, there's a lot of people in LA and Europe and other places, but we're probably second or third in terms of density here. So I don't know. Indianapolis is a pretty good place to be for a Bitcoiner.
Good enough. I just want to make sure everybody in Indianapolis knows that they need to find out more about Bitcoin, that we have a community up there. How did you find out about Bitcoin? What was your orange pill moment?
Wow, my orange pill moment. I first heard about Bitcoin or learned about Bitcoin when I moved to Indianapolis with everything I owned in my Honda Accord, and I started coaching football. I was a former Division I football player, and the guy that I was coaching for actually owned a small furniture leasing and rental company and had a big warehouse. And this guy was actually mining a bunch of different crypto out of his warehouse. And this was 2015 or so. And that was kind of when I first learned about Bitcoin. They were mining a bunch of other stuff. Raven Coin was probably their biggest holding, but also Bitcoin. And it was just fascinating to me because I had no idea about what that was. He was sort of libertarian in his thinking and his process, which was very different from where I come from. And then fast forward another year or so, a couple folks in our office, I worked at a SaaS company that was, my traditional background and experience, software as a service or kind of cloud software. And we were trying to see who would have the best performing portfolio. And there was one guy in our office, Jeremy Leventhal, and some other folks who started to have better performing portfolios. And, you started to see what different assets they had in their portfolios. And Bitcoin was ripping and running during this time from 2016 to 2017. I think that was the rise from 3,000 to 20,000, and so that's when I really got involved into Bitcoin. It was really from other people in the office having better performing portfolios, and so it was just sort of exposure by just happenstance. And then when you get in, you dive in and you redo your office to look like this, and you join companies like Swan. So.
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole that consumes everything if you allow it to, and it's easy to consume everything. You and I both got into Bitcoin about the same time, and you're right. That's when it went from up to $20,000, which was mind-boggling at the time. Now that seems like nothing. Now that we're talking though about you, kind of like give us more of a basic short bio about yourself. I mean, who is Dante?
Yeah, I've had I feel fortunate. I feel blessed to have the life and the experiences that I've had. I'm a first generation college student. My parents went into the military. My mom, when she was 18, my dad got his GED the day he turned 17, had an 8th grade education. I was born in Frankfurt, Germany. They were in the military and served there during the Gulf War. And then we came back and lived on a military base. And so my parents really worked hard. I got a lot of opportunities in my life that they, didn't have. They didn't necessarily have, a really rough upbringing. But I would say that they instilled hard work and a work ethic in me that really just pushed me to want to be something with myself. And so, my main path to college was through football. I played at a small school called William and Mary, Division I school, second oldest university to Harvard. When I got there, I ended up having a pretty good football career. It was all conference, preseason All-American a few times while I was there. But when you get there at a place like William and Mary, it's a lot less about the athlete part of student athlete and more about the student part. And so I was just exposed to really interesting entrepreneurs and people. One guy had been a part of the Norton antivirus team, and, he had created the seat belt for IVs, refracts light up your arm because 50% of IVs leak, but they just have saline in them. And he said, Dante, while you're here on a scholarship, don't take anything for granted. Don't take anything that's an elective like underwater basket weaving, but take everything towards a major. And so I really learned how to learn when I was there, and I graduated with a degree in marketing and in finance and in process management and consulting. And so I've just really been a lifelong learner ever since. And it was really spurred on by the environment and the people I was around. And I think I carry that into Bitcoin, with Swan and, all of this free information you can find on Twitter. And all of these people are literally some of the smartest people in the world. And just exposing yourself to these ideas, to these podcasts will really, encourage you to be a lifelong learner, because that's what the community you're immersed in is also doing.
Well, that's pretty good opportunity there to get to go to school there, I have to say. That's a very good opportunity. Congrats on that. So Tell us real quick though. Now you're with Swan, and we've had Corey on before and other people. But for those who haven't seen past episodes, you think in like 3 minutes you could give us a basic rundown on Swan?
Absolutely. Swan is the largest Bitcoin-only exchange in the world other than Cash App. And we're a Bitcoin-only financial services company. And so we offer products and services to retail investors. So these are people that want to just sign up, get into Bitcoin. We have one mission as a company: do what's right for Bitcoin and for Bitcoiners. And so one of the things that we kind of hang our hats on at Swan is 83% of all coins purchased on our platform are withdrawn to self-custody. And so that's really part of our mission, is to educate people on not just buying Bitcoin, but understanding Bitcoin, knowing what you hold and knowing what you own. And starting from that retail perspective, we've grown into other products. Swan Business, which is what I've been running and been in charge of. This is for entities, LLCs, trusts, foundations, nonprofits that want to hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet, sort of like MicroStrategy. And then we also have other products. Swan Vault, it's a multi-sig product that we have. We have IRAs. How do you hold Bitcoin in a retirement portfolio in a tax-advantaged way? We have Swan Private, which is our concierge service for high net worth investors. These are people that get a Bitcoin expert 24/7, 365, like Stephen Lupka or Alex Danzik or John Haar or Isaiah Douglas, all these people that you can just text 24/7 and ask questions about: how do I custody my Bitcoin? How do I set up inheritance planning? How do I set up a digital executor for my trust? And they just walk you through this process. And then finally, we have our institutional product now, which is Swan Mining, some of our institutional lending products, and some things there that you guys have seen in the news as of late. But that's really Swan. We're building, a financial services company like you would experience with Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley, but for the Bitcoin only audience, and specifically for Bitcoin as an asset class.
Well, Swan does, as you just said, does a lot. I mean, and that's not even counting, you put on this Pacific Bitcoin Festival. I mean, you guys are into almost every piece of Bitcoin, it seems to me, at some level. When we come back, I want you to explain and give you a heads up on this. I know you'll have no problem. I want to get into dollar cost averaging. I was talking to one of the producers here about that before you came on the air. And I know she'll be watching this, so stay tuned with more with Dante, and we'll talk about dollar cost averaging, Pacific Bitcoin, Swan, and a lot more. We'll see you in just a minute. And welcome back to the show, the Bitcoin Boomer, the show that is. And I'm Gary Leland, the Bitcoin Boomer. Today we're joined by Dante Cook. Dante, welcome back to the show. Before we go any further though, I want to get into Swan a little bit. Before we do that, I want to know, according to Dante, what is Bitcoin? I get a lot of different answers on this, and a lot of them are the same. But in your description, what is Bitcoin?
To me, I mean, Bitcoin is, I think, all things that are beautiful in life. And this can be, you can have different perspectives of wherever you come from, a faith background and perspective. I think Bitcoin in a lot of ways points to this beauty and to, a higher power, like a higher creator. And to me, the incentives around Bitcoin, the fact that it represents hope, the fact that it represents freedom, to a lot of people reminds me a lot of, Christianity. But I think one thing that I'm always careful to do in terms of what is Bitcoin is not to worship the created thing over the creator itself. And so in a lot of ways, to me, the fervor around Bitcoin, mimics, has a lot of religious undertones. But, I want to always be clear to make sure that I have it in the right perspective and the right priority. So what is Bitcoin to me? It is a tool for liberation. It is a tool for freedom. And primarily as a practical tool, it is a savings technology that allows people to outpace, fiat debasement and maintain purchasing power when you have an inflationary economy. in a currency that is backed by nothing other than the words and the policies and the whims of whatever politicians that are leading and ruling that day. So to me, Bitcoin practically is a tool for savings and outpacing fiat debasement, but larger in a broader context, it's a tool that represents hope and freedom and points to kind of a larger story that I believe in personally.
Well, I have to agree with you on that, especially you were talking a minute ago about it being like a Christian thing. Example, you said, not a Christian thing, but an example with that. I find people share the word about Bitcoin like Christians share the word about the Bible. I mean, there's a lot of similarities there to me. And people are doing it not because they think that's going to make them go to heaven. They're doing it because they think that's going to help that other person go to heaven. And Bitcoiners do it not because it's going to make their Bitcoin worth more money, but it's going to help other people get some Bitcoin to help when Bitcoin goes to the moon, to help them out financially. I just find a lot of similarities there. So when you brought that up, it kind of like hit a thing I'm always saying. There's a lot of similarities between the two. You thoughts on that? Am I out of it? Or?
Yeah, let me actually, no, I think that's completely right. Let me just see if I actually wrote a piece on this, and I should have pulled it up. I don't even think that I was necessarily thinking about that 100% when I shared that, Gary. I apologize.
That's okay.
But the whole premise, I think when I get down to my writing, is that by no way can you prove the existence of God or a creator or this intelligent being in the same way that you cannot prove or maybe disprove of this assertion of Satoshi Nakamoto. And in the same way, this benevolent, intelligent being or creator created this open network and system that had to be carried forward by another group of people who do that imperfectly, right? Who share the message about it imperfectly. But the heart of what they're trying to do is to warn people about the upcoming doom or upcoming problems that will occur. And so how that comes off, how people do that, I think it actually carries a lot of parallels to Bitcoin in that, Christianity, is this system that was developed and grown out of the oppressive regimes of others and was created in light of that. And so there's just a lot of similarities there. I believe that there's more to go into. I actually wrote an article or a paper about it, and I just didn't have time to bring it up. But it's a lot of similarities to me. But I always want to make sure, you don't want to worship the created thing over the creator. That's always my thing with people in Bitcoin is Bitcoin will solve problems. Absolutely. Will it solve all of your problems? Absolutely not.
Yep. Another good point. I can't argue that at all. It's just like money is not going to solve all your problems. Might solve some money problems if you're in debt or something, but it's not going to take you to the promised land. Let's put it that way. I want to switch over to some Swan stuff now. Tell me about, y'all, as I said earlier, y'all do a lot of stuff in the Bitcoin fields. Y'all are probably touching, need I say, almost every part of Bitcoin. And one of the things you're doing is the Swan Bitcoin Festival, which I've been to every year. And really, it's a great event. I know y'all are my platinum sponsor for BitBlock Boom, which I appreciate, but I do want to talk about your festival, which is at a different time of the year than mine. Mine's in April, and yours is like October, maybe? Can you tell us a little bit about the festival?
Yeah, the Pacific Bitcoin Festival is truly just a celebration of Bitcoin and all of the people that are in Bitcoin that represent the Bitcoin network. So we've had, the last several years, several thousand people come out to Santa Monica that celebrate. I remember in 2022, our first year launching the conference when Bitcoin crashed to $17,000, and there wasn't a single person there, several thousand people that were worried or talking about prices. Like even Michael Saylor, one of our keynote speakers, right? He's interacting with all of these people who've flown and come in across the world. And price wasn't the central point about what we were gathering there. One of the coolest things about the Pacific Bitcoin Festival is this idea about community, this idea about Bitcoin being cool. So it's probably one of the coolest conferences that you'll ever go to. There's music, there's stages, there's beaches, there's basketball, there's sports, there's athletes, professional athletes, amateur athletes. There's entertainers, there's celebrities, there's normal Bitcoiners, like everyday people like you and me. And we're all interacting and we're vibing for 2 days. So that's what Pacific Bitcoin is. It's less of just an informational kind of pump and dump. It's truly a community. It's truly an opportunity to gather with like-minded people and to be encouraged and inspired about what's happening in Bitcoin, but in a cool way.
Very cool way. Like I said, I enjoy it completely. I think it's one of the, besides mine, one of the best conferences out there, without a doubt. And there's a lot of other stuff going on during the conference too. And that's a really good point about no one was worried about the price of Bitcoin, even though it had gone from 60 to 17 or whatever. Most of the people that attend this conference, as like in mine, as it's going down, they're not selling their Bitcoin. They're trying to acquire more because they feel it's on sale rather than, oh my gosh, it's going out, it's going bankrupt. They feel it's on sale and it's the time to buy.
Gary, Bitcoin, Bitcoin and investing in general, it's the only phenomena in the world where prices get cheaper and people sell. But when the price goes up, they're all crowding at the door. It's the exact opposite of the grocery store. When the price of things go down at the grocery store, everyone is piling up to stockpile all of this stuff. If meat got cut in half at Costco, the line would be around the entire state. But when Bitcoin gets cheaper, people run for the exits. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it's not really consistent. But the OGs kind of know it's another great opportunity to buy and stack some sats.
And I remember when it was going down to 17, I had a neighbor of mine talk to me about Bitcoin. I said, well, you ought to buy something. It was like about 30. He goes, I'm going to wait for it to hit under 20. Then I saw him a few months later. I said, well, it got down to 17. Did you buy any? He goes, nah, I just didn't want to pull the trigger on it. Okay, now it's 70. People have a hard time making that call because it is not like your traditional investment, but then again, it is. But it's scary to people because they just don't understand and they keep going, what's it backed by? Or how's mining work? Or all these things that are not that important to me. But we'll be right back with more with Dante Cook from Swan right after these words from our sponsor. Stay tuned. And welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Before I bring our guest back on, I do want to make sure you're aware of something. This show is only here to help educate you about Bitcoin. That's it. I don't have any Bitcoin I want to sell you. I'm not going to tell you where you can go get some gold. I'm not doing anything except giving you information by bringing on great guests, information about Bitcoin. And you will get educated and you can make the call someday and decide if you want to get some Bitcoin or not. But at least, no matter which route you go down, you're going to have a basic understanding of Bitcoin, what it is, how it's used, where it came from watching this show. Now let me welcome back Dante Cook from Swan Bitcoin. Dante, welcome back to the show. I do have a couple of questions. Number one, I want you to tell us about dollar cost averaging. Not enough people understand that concept. And to be honest with you, I didn't know dollar cost averaging until I got into Bitcoin. There are a lot of things I didn't know about finance until I got into Bitcoin. And that's one of them, which dollar cost averaging is not a Bitcoin thing. It's just a way to buy Bitcoin that I wasn't aware of. So Swan, one of the things you do is offer dollar cost averaging. So would you please give us some information on that? Because I think people really, if they want to start, that's the best place to start.
Yeah, that's a great place, Gary. And let me just highlight the two primary ways that people invest. It's typically dollar cost averaging or continuing to buy at regular intervals over time, or you have this other paradigm, which is lump sum investing, which is I'm going to put all of my money into this asset all at one single time. And it's funny because in the financial advising world, the money management world, people will never advise you to lump sum all of your money into an asset all at once. But yet when Bitcoin's price goes down, they go, well, it's from here to here. And it's like, well, don't you actually recommend dollar cost averaging? Which the reason why dollar cost averaging is so successful is because it removes human emotion from the investing and savings, strategy, which one of the best books on finance in general is a book by, Morgan Housel. It's called The Psychology of Money. And he just talks about all of the different ways that, our human emotions can interrupt the eighth wonder of the world, which is compounding. And so dollar cost averaging at Swan, we've just built this as a foundational feature into the product, which allows you to buy a certain amount of Bitcoin over time at regular intervals. So this could be $100 a day. This could be $100 a week or a month. And it's sort of a set it and forget it strategy that allows you to continue to buy into Bitcoin and average out your cost basis so that you're continuing to just stack more sats over time. And some interesting stats from across our user base: 100% of all Swan customers who have a savings plan on our platform are in the green. 100%. They have an average cost basis of $31,293. These are some analytics that we track at Swan. And what's interesting is that 98% of people who have ever created a savings plan or a dollar cost averaging plan are also in the green. But the differences between the performance that people who have an active savings plan versus people who just created them are, the people who just created a savings plan and maybe still aren't using it have an average price increase performance of 63%. The people who have an active savings plan, they're continuing to dollar cost average, have an average price performance of 83%. So they're outperforming by over 20% by simply just setting it and forgetting it, dollar cost averaging. And, it's really, there's no magic to it. It's just you're avoiding your own emotions by seeing the price going up and down. And then just stepping out a little bit further into some larger data ranges, anybody who's held Bitcoin for more than 4 years at any single point is in the green. So if you've bought and dollar cost averaged into Bitcoin at any point, maybe you started in November of 2021, maybe you started even 2 weeks ago, at any point, if you've dollar cost averaged into Bitcoin, you are in the green. Minus, if you started a day or so ago. So that is kind of the metrics and the numbers behind it. Lump sum investing is just saying that I know what's going to happen in the short term more so than what the market does. And that can lead you to, again, results that you may or may not want.
Well, that's a good point, talking about the set it and forget it, which is the thing to do. I was talking to a friend, I was telling Steph, our producer here, I was talking to a friend of mine who I talked into dollar cost averaging in 2019 maybe, or 2020. And she's never looked at it. She's been dollar cost averaging about $25 a month. And but she's been doing it now for 4 years, going maybe 5 years. I mean, I can't remember when she started. So I asked her the other day, are you still dollar cost averaging? She goes, yeah, I hadn't touched it. I've still got it, taking that money. I said, well, you're going to be pleasantly surprised, I think, because she hasn't kept up with Bitcoin at all. And so she went in and looked at her account and she was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's that much money now. So she was pleasantly surprised.
Gary, all the biggest accounts at Fidelity and Vanguard are dead people. Most people don't realize that.
Really?
They're people who have died and no longer have access to their accounts.
Oh my gosh. And they just keep getting worth more and more and they're just sitting there. I had no idea. Say that again. All the biggest accounts at Fidelity are dead people.
Yep, they're dead people.
I've never heard that statement before, or that fact. And I believe you, don't get me wrong, I've just never heard that. It makes sense. Just like I guess some of the biggest Bitcoin accounts are the people who lost all those sats back in 2010 and 11, because they weren't losing 5 sats. They were losing, thousands of Bitcoins,
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the same.
Yeah, and the people that that interrupt that compounding are the people that, tend to have more mistakes than not.
So going on that subject, how does someone prevent that from happening with their Bitcoin? That they die and their family goes, I know he has 100 Bitcoin, but how? We don't know where it's at or how to get to it. How do people avoid that?
Gary, I think one of the things that mainstream media has done to attack Bitcoin in a lot of different ways is overblow the complexity around self-custody and taking ownership and responsibility for your assets. And it's frankly, it's pretty sad, because to the extent that you can remember or store 12 or 24 words, Gary, I know, I'm a big music guy. I know the lyrics from start to finish to hundreds, maybe over 1,000 songs throughout the course of my life. And so saying that I don't have the capability or capacity as a human being in the 21st century to memorize, write down either on a piece of paper in multiple places or on a steel plate 12 words, I think is ludicrous, because that is the extent to which you need to secure your Bitcoin. And not just any amount of Bitcoin. We're talking about $10 worth of Bitcoin to $10 trillion worth of Bitcoin. It all uses the same mechanism. And so one of the ways that we can, begin to help people on their journey, and we talk a lot about this at the Daily Bitcoin Show, is pushing people on that continuum to learning about self-custody, for taking ownership of their digital property. Because there's a difference between everyone having Bitcoin, having access to these rights, and then people actually taking advantage of the rights that they actually have. And so Bitcoin is one of the only asset classes out there that allows you to really easily take self-custody. And at Swan, what you can do is just literally go download a wallet. It could be Phoenix Wallet, it could be Blue Wallet, it could be, buying a Blockstream Jade or a Cold Card, and you add a wallet address, and Swan will let you automatically withdraw to that address. You don't even have to think about it. And by doing that, what you're doing is you set an automatic, job to go to the bank and take my cash out of the bank and put it under my mattress. That's essentially what you're doing when you're withdrawing and taking self-custody. But people think it's so much more difficult than it is. And so that's what we do a lot, is try to educate people on, if you can remember 12 words, if you can pass 12 words down to your brother, to your uncle, to your pastor.
We got to go, Dante. We got a hard break here. We'll be right back after this word from our sponsor. And welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Today we're joined by Dante Cook from Swan Bitcoin. Dante, welcome back to the show. I do have a question for you. Well, of course I have questions for you. I don't know why I keep saying that. I sound like an idiot. But I am an old boomer, so what do you expect, right? A lot of people, we've never covered this on the show, and I'm hoping you can help us with this, because I know that Swan has this resource. What is over-the-counter buying? Explain to our audience what buying over-the-counter is. Most of them, we've talked enough about going to exchanges and buying it, but we've never talked about over-the-counter. And a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I answered this question a few days back on our Bitcoin Daily Show that I do, because there's a lot of questions out there right now, especially with these ETFs, and there's some narratives that there won't be any more Bitcoin to trade or sell. What happens when there's no more Bitcoin left on exchanges? Well, all of exchanges, whether it's swan.com or Coinbase or even miners, they all go through this party called OTC desks. And these people are just people that are essentially the grease to facilitating transactions. And so imagine if every time you wanted to sell something, you had to individually call a person or email a person and say, what price do you want to buy this at? And then they give you a price, and then you send them an email back, and then you say, well, no, I don't want to sell at that price. An OTC desk is essentially a broker or a market maker that pulls a group of buyers and a group of sellers together who have these individual needs. I want to sell at this price and I want to buy at this price. And so what they do is they match these different blocks and amounts of buy and sell orders. And so Bitcoin being the most liquid market in the world, it trades 24/7, 365. It has more liquidity than any other asset class out there. And so what happens is these OTC desks are continually matching buyers that want to buy Bitcoin and sellers that want to sell Bitcoin. And so that's how Bitcoin moves from exchanges to your wallet, or from your bank account sending money into Swan.com and Swan.com acquiring that Bitcoin on your behalf. We go to partners and OTC desks that facilitate that.
Easy enough. So it's just a way to buy it over the counter instead of through an exchange like we usually buy it from.
Yeah, and what we're doing as an exchange or third party is we are just facilitating that interaction with an OTC desk on your behalf. So, I mean, again, imagine if you were an OTC desk, if you had to deal with thousands, millions of individual people who constantly want to buy and sell, right? So they're just pooled amounts of buy and sell orders that again are facilitated through these desks.
That makes sense. Another thing that someone asked me, and I wasn't able to explain it properly, I don't think. Over the last month, ETFs have been out, and the inflows to ETFs have been great, but the outflows from Grayscale have been great and even greater on some days. But the ETFs have pretty much been gobbling all that up. But last week, for instance, I think the outflows from Grayscale were higher than the inflows to the ETFs, I believe. The question I have for you is Grayscale Trust, the outflows from that's people selling their Bitcoin basically, right?
Yes and no. On the surface, it's people just selling their Bitcoin. When you actually look at a chart, if you overlay the selling of GBTC versus the buy bids that are through IBIT, it's pretty much 1-to-1. What you're seeing are a lot of people exchanging their higher fee GBTC for lower fee IBIT or FBTC, which is Fidelity's product, or ARCB or BITB, because they have lower fees. And so GBTC has a 1.25% annual fee on holding that Bitcoin proxy, and BlackRock's at 0.25%. Bitwise and others, right? They're moving towards free. And so people aren't necessarily getting out of Bitcoin when you see GBTC outflows. A lot of what you're seeing is actually rotation into lower cost products.
Like last week, I believe almost every day there were more outflows than there were inflows from GBTC. And that's what got me curious. I was going, wouldn't all those people just be putting their money right back into an ETF? And I think most days they do, but it didn't seem to be that way last week to me. So that's what got my question going. Hey, we've got about 4 minutes left. So first of all, I want you to, and we'll come back to this if we have time, I want to make sure we get this in. Can you tell everybody where they can follow you, what they can find the Swan products, the whole list of, where everything's at, you included.
Yeah, Swan, we're really easy to find. If you want to follow us on Twitter, it's just @Swan is our handle. Our website is swan.com. That's pretty easy there. And my handle personally is Dante_Cook1. Or you can follow my daily content on our Swan YouTube channel, which is Swan_Bitcoin. And our playlist is, the Bitcoin Daily Show, where we post all of the news happening in the market every single day. And so I'll be recording our show for today right after this. And so that's a great place where you can follow me, follow Swan, and engage with our content.
Good enough. Thanks. I just want to make sure we got that in before time ran out on us and we were going, time's up. Now let's go back to, tell me about your thoughts on ETFs. Let's talk about ETFs. They've kind of been, as we just said a few minutes ago, the inflows have been tremendous. And I think we have more people now coming out announcing they're going to come out with ETFs. Just wanted your basic rundown on those.
Yeah, the old adage of it's not what you know, it's who you know. So that sort of means in a way, and how this relates to ETFs, are ETFs essentially legitimized other people getting into Bitcoin because institutional investors, venture capitalists, hedge funds, family offices have gone, oh, well, if Larry thinks it's good, Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, well, then it has to be good. If Fidelity says it's okay to own this asset class, then it has to be. So it's sort of been that proxy or that idea of it's not what you know. Bitcoin has been the same since 2009 as it is today. But what it's been allowed to do because of institutions like BlackRock and Fidelity and others sponsoring Bitcoin has opened up a wide array of potential buyers. And one good way to think about this, if you're familiar with technology, ETFs are the API for the financial industry to get into Bitcoin. A lot of companies and organizations don't necessarily have a way to hold assets, physical assets like Bitcoin on their balance sheet or in their company structure. And ETFs are a proven, regulated way that allows them to buy and hold thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin in a pretty simple way that their companies are already allowed to do. So the ETFs create a new market. They create new marketing dollars. They create new buyers. They create a much larger audience than Bitcoin would have had otherwise. We call this the ETF multiplier effect.
Have not heard that effect either, but that's another good piece of information for me. I found out from boomer friends, since that's my niche I hang out with most of the time, quite a few of them wanted to get into Bitcoin, but they didn't want to pull the funds out of their retirement accounts and pay the capital gains. So the ETFs really opened up a door for them to get into Bitcoin without having to learn how to self-custody it and without taking a big hit, as soon as they got out of their retirements and threw it into Bitcoin. So I think ETFs, all in all, was definitely been good for Bitcoin from what we see with the price. And I think it's given some people an opportunity to get into Bitcoin that would be scared to take that hit, because already they're worried about Bitcoin and they're taking a big hit to get into it. But Dante, I do want to thank you for coming on today's show. I assume I'll see you in Santa Monica in a few months. And so
absolutely.
I look forward to meeting you in person this time. And I'm sure we've run into each other, just probably in passing though. So this time we're going to have to do a little bit of talking. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
And have a good week. We'll be right back after this word from our sponsor. And welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. I hope you've enjoyed today's show and you've learned something, especially with our guest, Dante Cook from Swan Bitcoin. Stephanie, give me your input from the Peanut Gallery. This is Peanut Gallery time always.
So Peanut Gallery wants to say that the dollar cost averaging situation sounds good, but I'm not completely comprehending. Can you what's the Gary retelling of what that is to Stephanie right now?
Certainly. Dollar cost averaging is one of the better ways to start Bitcoin or get into Bitcoin. The pretense is that, let's say a Bitcoin's at 3,000, then it goes up to 20,000, then it goes down to 10,000, then it goes up to 40,000, then it comes down to 5,000, and it goes up to 70,000. Those are all wild numbers, believe me, but I'm just using those to make an example. By dollar cost averaging, you're buying, let's say if you dollar cost averaged every day or every week, you're buying Bitcoin at the same time, every day, every week, every month, but you're buying at a straight line. You're buying every day, let's say at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock. By buying every day or every week like that, you're buying whether Bitcoin's 70,000 or whether Bitcoin's 50,000 or whether Bitcoin's 30,000 or 60. So you're averaging. So if I was to buy Bitcoin today and I said, okay, I got $10,000, I want to buy Bitcoin, I'd be buying at $70,000. But next week, for all I know, Bitcoin might drop to 60 or it could drop to 50. It's a very volatile asset. So by dollar cost averaging, you're buying no matter what the price is over a certain amount of time. And so you average a cheaper price than you do just by buying all at one time. That's the pretense. That's why it's called dollar cost averaging. And that's a stock term, not a Bitcoin term. Bitcoiner, it just works for Bitcoin just as well. So I hope that answers your question there, Steph. And I do want to tell people a few things about going on. First, check bitblockboom.com. That's the great Bitcoin conference I host in Dallas, Texas every April. We're about 2 weeks away. So do check out bitblockboom.com. Also check out our meetup at meetup.com/bitblockboom. Once a month or so, we host a meetup here in Dallas, Fort Worth, where BitBlockBoom is also hosted. And we had like 30 people over there last Friday. We have a great time getting together, talking about Bitcoin, learning about Bitcoin. Also want to make sure you know about satscardshop.com, satscardshop.com. That's the place to buy SAT cards, which are a great way to gift Bitcoin. If you want to give a Christmas stocking stuffer or something like that, check out satscardshop.com. Until next week, this is your host, Gary Leland, saying thank you for watching, thank you to my great producer, Stephanie, and thank you to BizTV for hosting our show. We'll see everybody next week, and remember to stack those sats.